From the creators of Medicare Made Simple, this is the Retirement Focus Academy with Kevin Geiger. In addition to Medicare, there are many pieces to the modern retirement puzzle. This show talks about those pieces of retirement and the tools used to help the retired and soon to be retired toward their lifetime goals. The Academy is on the air. This is the Retirement Focus Academy.
Welcome to Retirement Focus Academy, powered by Geiger Investments and Kevin Geiger. You can find out more about the team, certainly, just by going to the website, geigerinvestments.com. But don't forget, if you have questions about a lot of different things financially, retirement-wise, taxes, Social Security, Medicare, hey, there's the Retirement Focus Academy that Kevin and his wife Lauren have started. It's the retirementfocusacademy.com, a great resource for anyone that's thinking about retirement. Hey, I'm getting close. I need to start thinking about it, what I need to do, planning, and all of that. retirementfocusacademy.com is here for you. There's no cost. There's educational workshops on all these topics. A great resource for you, and it's always free of charge to you. That is retirementfocusacademy.com. Now, Kevin, we're going to be talking about the importance of having a plan when it comes to retirement. So I want to give you this quote, and tell me if you think it kind of pertains to retirement planning. All right? You ready?
I'm ready for it.
Theodore Roosevelt said this: if you could kick the person in the pants responsible for most of your trouble, you wouldn't be able to sit for a month. And that's kind of really,
I like that. That's a good quote.
I mean, it's really about planning for retirement. A lot of people go, wait, I got a pension, I've got IRAs, I got 401ks. I think I'm doing okay, so I think I'm going to be okay. I'm just going to retire. And that's all the thought they put into it. I'm going to start Social Security at this age. I'm going to do this. Medicare kicks in at 65. And they kind of look generally at it without being specific. How important is it to have a business-like plan for our retirement?
It's real important. People, what I've found over the years is people spend too much time talking about putting a plan together versus putting a plan together and executing it, right? So with retirement is no different than someone building a whole big building or a new complex or something like that, where they get the blueprints, the drawings, and then they have people kind of running numbers to make sure things are going to line up and all that kind of stuff, right? It's no different than being in the kitchen making cookies. I mean, cookies is a great analogy because I don't know about you, but there's a right way of making cookies, and then there's just the wrong way, which I'm probably in the wrong wave zone with making cookies, right? So, we all think our cookies are amazing, but there's the right ingredients you got to mix a certain way. And you got to have all the right pieces to the puzzle to fit inside there into that cookie batter to make it good. But, there's one little trick that I learned from Lauren over the years about cookies and what makes cookies so amazing. It's not just the ingredients. It's the fact that you can actually, if you put the dough in the refrigerator for an hour or so and get it cold, it would actually change the whole dynamic of how good that cookie would be. Well, it's no different than retirement. By just taking that time, putting that plan together, executing it, taking a step back, evaluating everything, making sure everything is right where it needs to be, right temperature and everything else, you can ensure that your retirement plan is going to be successful. And the key thing in the end is executing that retirement plan. A plan is only as good as what you do to execute it. And you got to make sure that you're following through with what your plan is, and you've got to make sure that you're constantly updating and changing your plan as life goes on. Because let's face it, life throws, a lot of curveballs, and we got to make sure that we're factoring that stuff in. So like for us, when we have clients coming in on a yearly basis, we're always redoing their plan. We're always evaluating what's changed this year, what's changing going forward. Maybe you have a new job or lost a job during the pandemic and things like that. And we're making sure that we're evaluating to make sure that it still fits inside your cookie recipe. And we're making sure that everything is going to be lined up. So that's a big deal to every retirement, is having a business plan in place and following it.
And I think a lot of people think of retirement just as, okay, I've got Social Security, I'm going to have Medicare, and my investments. That's kind of what they think about. Actually, there's an income plan that Kevin and the team at Geiger Investments create for you. You've got to have income. You've got to replace paychecks that are no longer coming in. You've got to have an investment strategy. Probably at 65, you're not going to invest exactly like you did at 35. That's got to have some adjustments. Tax efficiency, you've got to have that going forward. We think taxes are going up for sure, so we've got to have a plan for that. What about healthcare, long-term care? What about legacy and estate planning? That is a retirement plan, those parts. Well, what about Social Security? It's in the income planning part. What about Medicare? It's in the healthcare part. A lot of moving parts. So, Kevin, there's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, if you will. It's almost like, when you think about putting a puzzle together, one thing that you always do is you're always looking at the picture on the box when you're trying to put the puzzle together, because you need a point of reference. And if we're not looking at the picture of our retirement and we're just looking at individual pieces, it can get very confusing, can it?
Yeah, no, it can, because if you're not looking at the overall picture, right? And people always, and you said it right, people, every time I talk to someone, says, so what have you been doing to plan for your retirement? They say, well, I got this magic number that I'm shooting for, and I'm about a year or two away from that, and oh wait, this market's been fantastic, I'm going to hit my number sooner. And I go, so what else are you doing to plan for that? And ironically, they're just like, oh, I thought that's what we did. We save money and we say, okay, we're going to go into retirement. Well, there's more pieces to the puzzle. What's going on, with your health insurance situation? If you're going to be retiring before Medicare, what's going to be your healthcare scenario? Do you know what that's going to cost? Do you know if you have any debts you got to be paying off? You still owe a mortgage? There's so many pieces to this puzzle that most people just don't take into consideration, and they need to. So when it comes to retirement, you got to understand: have you saved enough for retirement? One of the question people always say when I ask that question is, I go, I don't know. I'm pretty sure I did. Well, how do you know? Have you stress tested your retirement? Have you figured out what how it's going to play out if there's a market downturn? How is that going to affect your retirement? I say last year is a good example of a tremor, right? The big one of California. We keep talking about this week by week, but I say this because for the first time in the last 11 years, because we've been doing so well in the market, that it was a good example of how quickly things can get ugly in the stock market. And if you're fully invested in the stock market for your retirement plan, and you're in or near in retirement, that could change and alter your whole plan altogether. And I don't know about you, Mark, but when I go into retirement, I like to know that when I retire, I'm retired and not being forced to go back to work, right? And that's a big piece of the puzzle. And then, of course, when you're looking at things, you got to make sure you're evaluating your retirement income sources, and don't just rely on one source. For example, maybe you have a pension. Congratulations, I'm happy for you. That's great, because as we all know, pensions are just disappearing left and right. But what people don't realize is, and I've dealt with this, and a good example is United Airlines. I had a lot of clients to United Airlines years back, and if you remember when they had to file bankruptcy, well, they ended up having to give their pension fund up to the pension guarantee fund. Well, what they don't realize, most people don't realize, is your pension payment, whether it's $2,000, $5,000, or whatever the case might be per month, is not guaranteed. It is only as good as the person paying it. And if it has to be pushed over to the guarantor fund through the government, you could see a reduction, like United did, of a 50% reduction in their payment. So don't rely on the fact that your pension is going to provide guaranteed income for yourself. Make sure you're diversifying, looking at different avenues of creating your own pension scenarios, your backup plans in case something doesn't work out, so you're really covering yourself. And then, of course, let's just say the last part, a couple things, is going into the healthcare stuff. And as you can see, I'm talking about a lot of different areas, and I'm not even touching on all the stuff we would normally would in a meeting. But healthcare is a big piece of the puzzle, and you've got to understand that you've got to have, a long-term care plan in place. What do I mean by that? Well, Medicare is not going to cover long-term care needs. Big misconception. As you know, we own Carolina Medicare, and we talk about this a lot with people going, what's your plan? If this happens, and most of them go, I thought this covered it. It does not. So you better be looking at options out there to really kind of protect you and your spouse going forward. And then, of course, if you're still working right now and just about to retire and you have an HSA savings plan, a lot of people don't realize, max that plan out as much as you can in your last year, even the last couple of years, because when you do retire, Medicare will allow you to keep that plan to cover and paying benefits going forward. You can't contribute more, but you can still use what you have there. So take a bigger chunk of change and move it over there, because it's going to help you as far as healthcare costs going forward in the coming years in retirement.
So as you can tell, there are a lot of moving parts when it comes to retirement. And if you've not thought about all of these, you're like, wow, I didn't know about that one or that one. Great opportunity to go to the website, retirementfocusacademy.com. Kevin and Lauren started the non-profit Retirement Focus Academy. It's a great resource for anyone thinking about retirement, getting closer to retirement, or even in retirement. Retirementfocusacademy.com. All these different educational workshops covering all topics related to retirement. And it's a great resource. And here's even better. It's free, always, to you, retirementfocusacademy.com. So let's go back to, say, the year 2000. If I'm retiring in 2021, congratulations if that's the case. That's kind of an exciting time, I would think, for a lot of people to be able to pull the plug on working and go retire. But let's go back, say, to 2000. Do we have any advantages over, those that retired in 2000 versus retiring in 2021? Are there any advantages for us retiring now?
Absolutely. One of the biggest ones is, 2000 to 2010, for example, as we all know, is called the lost decade. And that's a big, what do I mean by that? Well, if you had $100,000 invested in the S&P 500, for example, good old S&P index fund, you basically at the end of 2010, your 100,000 is worth about 100,000 again. So you everything you grew, you lost because of 2008 and things like that. But for anyone that's retiring now, especially if you were in your last 10 years of work and '08 rolls around, you work through that, and now you decided, hey, it's time to start really kicking in more money into my retirement fund. Well, it actually worked to your advantage. The fact of the matter is we've had 11-year plus bull run, and as crazy as last year ended, we ended up doing pretty darn well as far as our retirement savings accounts. So, great people had an opportunity to just put a ton of money away, go right into retirement on a high note, if you want to call it, with a good chunk of change. And so, that's real important for people to understand. If you're in or near in retirement right now, this is a great time to start taking those chips off the table and, and creating, scenarios that are going to provide your own self with what I call a personal pension account if you don't have a pension now. Take some money off the table, put them into different vehicles that are going to guarantee these types of lifetime income scenarios, if you want to call it, so you can protect your retirement going forward. Because let's face it, one day in the near future, whether it's this year, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, there's going to be another 2008 type of year where we're going to lose a ton of money in the market. You don't want to be overinvested. And I think today more than ever, especially about 20 years ago, as pensions were starting to disappear, there wasn't a lot of options out there as far as ways of creating a personal pension account. What do I mean by that? Well, insurance companies have tons of vehicles out there that you can use where the insurance company takes the risk on to basically create a pension-like account from your retirement savings. Because let's face it, as pensions disappear, companies are putting you in a situation where you have to create your own scenario. They say, here's your 401k, we're going to contribute 5%, 4%, whatever the case would be to it. And that's their way of saying, we're not doing pensions anymore, but we're just going to give you money. But you have to be able to, diversify and create your own pension-like accounts for yourself. A lot of people don't realize a lot of these pension-like accounts that these insurance companies have out there can create 100% spousal benefit, which is a big deal. Pensions back then, if you remember right, it was usually about a 50% benefit to the spouse. So that was a big kicker. What a lot of spouses don't realize when they were getting maybe $5,000 a month, and now all of a sudden they're going to get half of that after their spouse passes away. Well, these kind of vehicles allow that. And then, of course, you go into like technology. Technology has been a good thing and a bad thing, right? Back when you used to, invest into the stock market, you had the newspaper to kind of see what the stock market did the day before, right? Maybe you watch on TV. Now you have your smartphones to do everything. And of course, I think most importantly, you have the Retirement Focus Academy to really kind of educate you. And I think that's probably the biggest thing going into 2021 and resources that people have that they just didn't have before. And that's why we created this non-for-profit, to just educate people and kind of lead them in the right direction.
So, the retirementfocusacademy.com is the website. Educational workshops covering all topics related to retirement, including planning. How should I go about planning for retirement? Income, investment, taxes, healthcare, legacy planning, estate planning. What about Social Security? When should I start it? What about Medicare? How do I do all of that? All of those topics are covered on the educational workshops that are on the website, retirementfocusacademy.com. And, of course, it's free of charge to you, retirementfocusacademy.com. You have questions, call the team at Geiger Investments, 843-790-9293, and just chat about your situation. Because we talk in general terms here because we have to, because there's a lot of different types of people listening. Maybe you only need $200,000 to retire successfully, but maybe you need $2 million. We don't really know. You think about that magic number that Kevin's alluded to earlier. Everybody's different. Everybody has hopes and dreams that are different for retirement. That's why it's important that you talk to Kevin and the team about your specific situation, and then they can help you in that specific situation. 843-790-9293. We're going to start the next segment with maybe some cost savings ideas that Kevin has for us. What are they? Stay with us. We're back with more of the Retirement Focus Academy, powered by Geiger Investments with Kevin Geiger. We're back in 1 minute.
You know what you want to do in retirement, but do you know how to get there? Get the retirement planning information you need by joining Kevin Geiger of Geiger Investments for the Retirement Focus Academy. What's the best way for you to take Social Security? When can you sign up for Medicare, and what does it actually cover? What and is there a way to lower your tax bill? These and much more will be discussed. To enroll in an upcoming virtual Retirement Focus Academy course, visit retirementfocusacademy.com or call 843-790-9293. Plan today so you can do the things you've dreamt about doing in retirement. Sign up for the Retirement Focus Academy with Kevin Geiger of Geiger Investments at retirementfocusacademy.com or call 843-790-9293. Advisory services offered through Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Securities offered through Peak Brokerage Services, LLC, member FINRA SIPC. Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC, and Geiger Investments are separate and independent entities from Peak Brokerage Services, LLC. Our firm is not affiliated with the U.S. government.
Glad you're with us today for the Retirement Focus Academy, powered by Geiger Investments. I'm Mark Elliott. Kevin Geiger, of course, Geiger Investments. Kevin and his wife, Lauren, are here to help. They've started a non-for-profit Retirement Focus Academy, a great resource for anyone getting closer to retirement or even in retirement. Different educational workshops covering all topics related to retirement right there on that one website, retirementfocusacademy.com. It's a great resource, and it's always free of charge to you, retirementfocusacademy.com. Today we're talking about the importance of planning, actually having a plan, a written plan for retirement. Not a 100-page manual that you're never going to look at, something that is usable and that is not written in stone because things happen in our lives and we have to be able to adjust and adapt. So the written retirement plan that Kevin and Lauren and the team at Geiger Investments create for you is really to tackle a lot of the what-ifs, but it's got to be able to move a little bit if something else happens that we really didn't think about. And there's always something, right? So it's really important to have a plan. Do you have any, and let's say that let's say 5 years out from retirement, or I'm 5 years into retirement, or anywhere in between. Do you have any cost savings ideas that maybe we should think about sooner versus later?
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know about you, but me, I'd say right around January timeframe is when I'm typically looking at everything we're spending our money on and trying to figure out where we can cut the fat, if you want to call it, right? So, but if you're in retirement, for example, or nearing retirement, and let's just say you're age 65 or older and you're drawing on Medicare right now for your health insurance stuff, this is a great opportunity, especially if you moved up down here from the north or south, whatever the case might be, and you came up here and you kept your Medicare supplement plan that you might have. What people don't realize, and I've run across a ton, especially this year alone, we were talking a lot about Medicare in the last few months, is these Medicare supplements are so expensive for people that are moving down here because they're staying with their current carriers. And just by switching carriers, the benefits stay exactly the same. But the carriers that are down here obviously have better contracts with all the doctors and all that kind of stuff to help bring the cost savings to someone else, which is the participant that's on there. And if you're on a Medicare Advantage plan right now, and you didn't listen to the show earlier the last couple months talking about me preaching, you got to be looking at your plan. There's a lot of cost savings that have come across the board on this thing. And what we've seen across the board is if you're paying for a Medicare Advantage plan right now, I'm going to tell you that you still have to the end of March to make one oopsie, I should have made a change scenarios, and maybe reach out to our office to talk about the Medicare Advantage plans that are now costing zero out of pocket, yet the benefits are actually bigger and better than they've ever been, because this is the lowest I've seen as far as the cost, as far as reductions across the board, than I've seen in so many years. So when it comes to healthcare, you got to be looking at your healthcare insurance, figuring out where you can cut the fat and cut the cost down, especially in prescription plans and things like that going forward. But then you got like auto insurance, you have your homeowner's insurance. When's the last time you actually shop that around? I know a lot of us get loyal. We're loyal with our people, just like people are loyal to us as clients, and I greatly appreciate that. But when it comes to insurance, especially auto insurance and home insurance, you got to shop that around. I'm going to tell you, I do this often, and I've over the years cut a lot of cost out as far as the homeowners and auto insurance, especially if I had no claims. It's silly for me to be paying these big premiums and stuff like that. So you got to be when's the last time you looked at your cable bill? Or your cell phone bill? I don't know about you with the cable bill, but the certain company, and I'm not going to mention the name, and I'm with them still, and every once in a year and a half, I call them back and renegotiate a new promotion deal. You can do that with these cable companies, guys. You got to go out there and start reaching out to them and your cell phone bill. I mean, if you're with some of these bigger carriers, I'm telling you, you're spending probably more money than you need to. And then when it gets into different things like with your home, this year, Mark, we had to, our second floor HVAC system blew out. It was a nightmare. The last 4 years, we've had to have this thing serviced. And finally, once and for all, we replaced the thing. And I learned something new, that every year your HVAC, your AC and heating, element, if you want to call it, in the house, loses its efficiency by 5 to 10% per year, meaning that your electric bill is more or less going to go up by that percentage because it's going to be working harder to get cooler or warmer, in the case might be. So, if you have a unit that's 10, 15 years old, you do the numbers on this thing, maybe cost savings wise in the future might actually help save you some money going forward in the later years in retirement by just spending maybe a few bucks more now to upgrade that kind of stuff. And then, of course, you got to have a budget. I don't know about you, but every year I redo my budget. I look at what we spent last year per what I did as a budget. I figure out how to, lower, the cost going forward. Maybe we went out to too many dinners. Maybe we had too many nights out, which, of course, last year we didn't do a whole lot of that, but this year that might change. So you got to be looking at these things to really cut your costs, because if you're in retirement, you're going to be on a fixed income. And if you're on a fixed income, you've got to understand that the last thing you want to do is tap into your retirement savings just so you can, live a lavish lifestyle, because at some point that retirement savings account is going to get smaller and smaller and smaller, and you could put yourself in a situation where you might run out of money before you run out. So these are kind of things that you should be thinking about, going into this new year. Now that we're 1 month into the new year, you still have 11 more months to kind of make changes, and that'll hopefully, improve your retirement going forward.
And don't forget, if you're getting close to retirement, you're thinking about retirement, or you're already retired, retirementfocusacademy.com is here for you. A lot of different educational workshops covering all topics related to retirement. My guess is there's not an educational workshop on air conditioning and heating. Maybe Kevin will add that. I don't know. retirementfocusacademy.com. There's no charge to you. A great, great resource for you. I'm Mark Elliott, Kevin Geiger with Geiger Investments. Glad you're with us today for the Retirement Focus Academy. We're talking about the importance of planning. Now, one thing I think is very difficult, Kevin, is I think a lot of people think that financial advisors are all the same. And we think, we've made it to retirement with really no guidance. We've got our 401k at work. We've taken advantage of the matching. Might even have put some into the 401k at work, the Roth side of things. We've done all this on our own, kind of. Do we really need a financial advisor when it comes to retirement? How do you look at that? Because I think a lot of people just think financial advisors are all the same.
Yeah, and there's a reason why we're a specialty office, why we focus on retirement. Because I'll be honest, in my own personal opinion, there's scenarios where a financial advisor prior to retirement, meaning like age 40 to early 50s, maybe it might be a good scenario where you really need a financial advisor. But if you got a 401k and that's where all your retirement savings is going, and things like that, outside of maybe setting up a 529 for your kid's college plan, I don't really always see the benefit of having a financial advisor. And that's just the honest truth. I mean, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I could be honest about this. There's probably not always a fit for it. But when it comes to retirement, and let's just say you're 5 years away from retirement or in retirement, this is the time where you've got to be making the right decisions about retirement and how you're going to spend down your money and how efficiently you're going to spend it down, more importantly. How are you going to save yourself on taxes? How are you going to plan if Social Security has a reduction in benefits? All these little pieces of the puzzle that you got to understand. This is where, like our office, which is strictly focused around retirement, really focuses on these key areas to make sure that we're fitting all the pieces to the puzzle in the right spot. Because if you're with a stockbroker, for example, in retirement, I'm going to tell you, his whole drive is growth. And that's all great and dandy over the last 11 years because the market's been so good. But if we have another 2008 one day, that could just decimate your retirement savings. And in his eyes, he was doing his job because he was looking for growth. The way we do things is a whole different way of looking at it. It's a little different holistic approach, if you want to call it, as far as how things are handled. So it's real important, if you're coming up to retirement, you work with a person that specializes in retirement, because they're the ones that are going to focus on preparing you and putting you through retirement successfully. And then the number one piece of advice I can give you is when you're sitting down, whether it's in our office or someone that really has done well in this business in that area, is follow the direction and listen to what they're showing you. Because and Mark, I don't know about you, but the internet is a great spot to learn a lot of things, but it's also a great spot to get a lot of bad information. And unfortunately, it's kind of put people in a situation where they just don't know what to do or what to trust. And that's real important. And that's why we cover that stuff in a lot of our classes, talking about the cloudiness of the internet and how it's actually hurt people more than it's helped people coming into retirement. So a lot of good things out there, but when it comes to a financial advisor, that's just kind of my belief on it, and hopefully that helps people going forward.
And I'm shocked that you said not everything on the internet is true. I'm shocked by that. All right, let's move on. Final thing for you. I'm going to give you some terms, and if you could, when we're talking financial advisors, retirement planners, and the like, there's some terms out there. So if you could take the final 3 minutes or so and kind of describe, kind of tell us what they mean. There's independent and there's captive. There is fiduciary, non-fiduciary, and then there's DL. I'm duly licensed. Independent versus captive, fiduciary versus not, and duly licensed, the importance of all of those.
Yeah, let's definitely talk about that. So, when you go to meet with someone, so for example, maybe you don't come into our office and maybe you've been working with someone or you're just starting to work with someone, ask them the question, are they independent or are they a captive office? What does that mean exactly? Well, for ours, we're Geiger Investments, right? That's our own investment firm. We have been an independent firm for 20 years now. So we've been doing this on our own versus, those, I call those storefronts you see everywhere. I'm not going to mention the names because we all see them all over the place, but those are what you consider your captive places, right? They have one big name out there that someone just works for. And there's a big difference between that because, being an independent, we don't have any ties to any different investment firm, different insurance firms. We work with everybody because there's always going to be a better fit for each different person. Every person's situation is individualized. So you got to understand that there's a place for that stuff. But if you're working with a captive office, most of the time they only work with a certain amount of companies and you kind of have to fit. Everyone has to fit that key into the same hole. And that doesn't always work for your retirement going forward. So that's why it's important to work with an independent. Now, as far as a fiduciary, that's a big piece of the puzzle. By being a fiduciary, we have standards that we have. I'm a fiduciary myself, so I have to hold my client's interest first and foremost. For example, I own, let's say all three of us own the same stock, for example, and that stock just starts going down because we heard some bad news coming about. I have to do what's best for you. So I have to sell everyone else's shares off before I can even do this for myself because I have to put your interest before mine, for example. And that people don't realize that. Like there's years I've taken a loss on something where I've had to get out of something, and I've had to do this for clients before anything else because, we get audited and they want to see this stuff and they want to see that these things happen. So, that's a big piece of the puzzle as far as, being a fiduciary and all that kind of stuff. And then what was the last question you had? I forgot though.
Yeah, and I'll just wrap that one up for you here because you think about independent versus captive. Independent is Kevin and Lauren's company. Captive, they're working for a company that you could think of, right? Fiduciary, morally, legally, ethically obligated to do what is in the client's best interest. And that's probably less than 25% of advisors across the country that actually operate under the fiduciary standard. The last one is duly licensed, meaning that Geiger Investments can help you in the investment world, the Wall Street world, but they can also help you in the insurance world. That's duly licensed. They're not just all insurance. They're not just all Wall Street. They help you in both of those worlds. And that's why Kevin and Lauren have started the Retirement Focus Academy, non-for-profit. There's no cost for you to go there. There's different educational workshops on all topics related to retirement. You can go there, check it out yourself, retirementfocusacademy.com. If you have questions, 843-790-9293, 843-790-9293. We're headed to February. Next week, Kevin's going to give us tips on Valentine shopping for your spouse. Right, Kevin? Have a great week. We'll do it again next week.
Sounds good, Mark, and take care, y'all.
Advisory services offered through Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC, a registered investment advisor. Securities are offered through Peak Brokerage Services, LLC, member FINRA and SIPC. Black Ridge Asset Management, LLC, and Geiger Investments are separate and independent entities from Peak Brokerage Services, LLC. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refer to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength and claims paying abilities of the issuing carrier. This radio show is intended for informational informational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the particular needs of an individual's situation. Blackridge Asset Management LLC is not permitted to offer, and no statement made during this show shall constitute tax or legal advice. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. The information and opinions contained herein provided by third parties have been obtained from sources believed to be reliable, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Blackridge Asset Management LLC. This radio show is a paid placement.